Imagine this: if every scar, every time you fell, and every desperate moment turned into a shining medal hanging proudly on your chest, would you dare to look back, face your past, and finally realize just how unbelievably strong you really are now? Scars tell a story. Picture this: you're standing in front of a mirror, tracing that old scar on your arm, or maybe the invisible one on your heart. At first, you might see it as damage, as something broken. But if you lean in closer, what you're really looking at is proof you survived. Every scar is like a diary entry that your body or your soul decided to keep, even when the pages around it got burned. Psychologists often remind us that the human brain remembers pain more vividly than joy. That's not a punishment, it's evolution's way of making sure you don't touch the same fire twice. But here's the twist: what if you reframe that pain? Instead of proof that life hurt you, each scar becomes evidence that you've been through the storm and made it out alive. That scar on your knee from falling off a bike when you were 8? It says you were adventurous. The emotional scar from a broken friendship? It says you were brave enough to love and trust. The lines on your face? They say you laughed, cried, endured, and kept going. Science even backs this up. Studies show that people who can reinterpret their painful memories as lessons rather than losses actually live longer, with lower stress and stronger immunity. That means the very act of storytelling your scars isn't just poetic, it's good medicine. So the next time you catch yourself hiding your scars, whether it's with long sleeves, silence, or shame, remember, those marks are not stains. They're medals. They're little tattoos gifted by life, saying, yes, you were knocked down, but you got back up. And honestly, isn't that more beautiful than pretending you were never hit at all? When pain lingers quietly. Strange fact: your brain doesn't care much about fairness. A kind word can fade in seconds, but a cruel comment can echo for years. That's why the memories of failures, betrayals, or illnesses seem to linger like a stubborn ghost in the room. You think you've moved on, yet there it is, whispering again. For people in their 50s, 60s, 70s, this whisper can grow louder. Retirement, health struggles, or simply the silence after the children leave can make old wounds resurface, convincing you that you've grown weaker instead of stronger. Psychology calls this the negativity bias. It's the brain's default survival mode: remember the bad, downplay the good. Thousands of years ago, this kept you alive in a world full of predators. But now, at home on a quiet Tuesday evening, it just feels like a trap. Instead of preparing you for danger, it tricks you into believing you're fragile, when in reality, you've proven resilience again and again. Let's take a real example. A woman in her 70s once told researchers she felt like a failure because she could no longer run like she used to in her 40s. The irony? At her age, she was walking daily, gardening, and still living independently, things half her peers had already given up. Her mind was replaying loss while ignoring victory. Sound familiar? Here's the secret: lingering pain is not evidence of weakness, it's simply unprocessed experience. Neuroscience shows that when you consciously label a painful memory, yes, this hurt me, but I survived, the amygdala, your fear center, calms down. Your brain literally rewires, teaching itself that survival, not suffering, is the headline. So if you feel like pain is still stuck to your skin, know this: it's not there to tell you you're broken. It's there waiting to be reframed, waiting for you to say, this is part of my story, but it doesn't define the ending. Your brain loves to exaggerate. Here's a funny trick your mind plays: it acts like a bad news broadcaster who only runs disaster headlines. Miss a phone call? Your brain says, you're losing touch with everyone. Forget where you put your glasses? It whispers, see, you're falling apart. The brain exaggerates because biologically, it's wired to highlight danger, not balance. Evolution gave you a smoke alarm that goes off not just when the house is on fire, but also when you're making toast. Neuroscience has proven this bias. The hippocampus, which organizes memory, tags emotional pain as urgent so you'll never forget it. That's why you recall the sting of a cruel remark from 30 years ago more sharply than the compliments you got last week. The brain wants to keep you safe, but in doing so, it convinces you that you're weaker than you are. Imagine this: a man in his 60s told researchers that he felt useless after losing his job. His mind kept replaying that moment as proof of failure. But when asked about raising his kids, fixing his home with his bare hands, or supporting a sick friend, he downplayed it all. His brain exaggerated the fall and muted the triumph. Sound familiar? Here's the reframe: if your brain is a bad news anchor, you can become the editor. Cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, teaches people to challenge exaggerated thoughts by asking, is this true, or is this just my fear shouting louder than facts? When you question the exaggeration, the spotlight shifts. Suddenly, I failed once becomes I also survived 1,000 times. So yes, your brain is dramatic, overprotective, and sometimes plain ridiculous. But that doesn't mean you're fragile. It means you've been carrying around a survival tool that just needs new instructions. In other words, you're not weak, you're living proof that you've survived your brain's exaggerations all along. The paradox of time. Here's something that sounds unfair at first: as the years pile up, your body slows down, but your strength, the kind that actually matters, quietly multiplies. Think about it. A 25-year-old might run faster, but they've never sat beside a hospital bed for weeks, or buried a loved one, or started life over after a financial collapse. That kind of endurance doesn't show up in a fitness tracker, it shows up in your scars, your patience, and the way you keep breathing even when it hurts. Science even backs this up. Researchers studying post-traumatic growth found that people over 60 often report higher levels of wisdom and emotional stability after hardship compared to younger adults. Why? Because you've had decades to practice resilience. Every crisis taught your nervous system a lesson: this, too, will pass. It's like calluses forming on your soul, not making you harder, but steadier. Here's the paradox: time slows your steps but strengthens your stance. Younger people have speed, but you have staying power. They sprint, you endure the marathon. And endurance wins in life far more often than speed. Take the story of a 72-year-old man who lost his partner and thought he couldn't go on. At first, grief convinced him he was finished. But over time, he leaned on small daily rituals: making coffee, taking short walks, writing letters. 2 years later, he wasn't just surviving, he was mentoring younger widowers, turning his scars into guidance. That's the paradox in action: the body weaker, the spirit unbreakable. So when you notice the slower knees or the extra pills on the counter, don't let that trick you. They're just the surface layer. Underneath is a resilience only time could carve. In other words, the longer you've lived, the stronger your survival muscles have become, even if you can't always see them flex in the mirror. The old man and the broken bridge. Imagine an old man standing before a wooden bridge that has collapsed in the middle. Everyone around him shakes their heads: you can't cross anymore. You're too old to try. Just stay where you are. And for a moment, he almost believes them. But instead of turning back, he begins picking up one plank at a time. Slowly, stubbornly, he lays them down, even if it takes all afternoon. Hours later, he's across, wobbly but triumphant, while the doubters still stand frozen on the other side. This story, though simple, reflects what psychologists call learned helplessness: the belief that after repeated setbacks, trying again is pointless. It's why so many in their later years stop reaching for goals, thinking, it's too late for me. But the truth? Age often equips you with exactly what you need: patience, persistence, and the wisdom to rebuild carefully. History gives us real examples too. At 65, Colonel Sanders had failed countless times before he finally started KFC, turning a lifetime of rejection into a global brand. Grandma Moses didn't begin painting seriously until her 70s, yet her work now hangs in museums. These aren't fairy tales, they're reminders that broken bridges can still be crossed, and neuroscience supports this resilience. The brain maintains neuroplasticity, its ability to form new connections, well into your 70s and 80s. That means new skills, new habits, and new paths are biologically possible, no matter your age. You may move slower, but the bridge can still be rebuilt. So when someone, or your own inner critic, says, you can't, remember the old man with the planks. Every scar you carry is not a stop sign but a tool, a piece of wood to keep laying down until the bridge is whole again. And once you cross, you won't just prove them wrong, you'll prove to yourself that persistence is ageless. Small daily powers. Here's a wild truth: your brain loves small wins more than big victories. Why? Because small wins are repeatable, stackable, and feel like candy to your nervous system. Take walking 5 minutes around the block. It sounds laughable, but neuroscientists have shown that even tiny bursts of physical activity release dopamine, the brain's "you did it" signal. It's not about the distance, it's about proving to yourself that motion is still possible. Think of it like watering a plant. You don't dump 10 gallons on it once a month, you give it a little every day. That's how resilience works. The 70-year-old who writes a single page each morning ends up with a book. The 65-year-old who calls one old friend a week rebuilds a network. The 80-year-old who practices balance for 2 minutes a day avoids dangerous falls. None of these actions make headlines, but they change lives quietly, like drops carving stone. There's even research on this. Psychologists Teresa Amabile and Stephen Kramer studied workplace motivation and discovered the progress principle. People feel most alive not when they achieve giant milestones, but when they notice small, consistent progress. Translate that to life after 50, 60, 70. It's not the marathon finish line, it's the daily steps that trick your brain into hope. So here's your practical challenge: pick one ridiculously small action. Not a life overhaul, just a seed. Walk to the mailbox. Write one thank you note. Drink one more glass of water. The trick is consistency, not intensity. Because the brain doesn't care how big the win is, it only cares that you showed up. The scars may be proof of battles past, but small actions are proof you're still in the game today. And honestly, that's the kind of quiet strength that sneaks up on despair and knocks it flat. The science of recovery. Here's something your doctor might not say out loud: your body and mind, even at 60, 70, or 80, are still wired to bounce back. Yes, slower than before. Yes, with more creaks and aches. But recovery is built into your DNA like a stubborn safety net. You are literally designed to repair until your very last breath. Neuroscience calls it neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to form new pathways. Studies show older adults who learn new skills, like painting or even using a smartphone app, actually grow fresh neural connections. Your brain isn't a dusty attic, it's more like a workshop that never closes. And physically? Muscles respond to strength training well into the 8th decade of life. In fact, research has proven that seniors who lift light weights twice a week increase both strength and bone density. Translation: your body still listens when you give it orders. Consider this: a 75-year-old man who started Tai Chi after heart surgery reported not only better balance, but also less depression. Why? Movement retrains both the body and the nervous system. The scar on his chest didn't mean he was broken, it was the evidence of healing, a reminder that recovery had already begun. Psychologists also highlight something called post-traumatic growth. After illness, loss, or trauma, many people report not just resilience, but deeper appreciation of life, stronger relationships, and sharper clarity about what matters. In other words, scars don't just heal, they upgrade the software of your soul. So here's the punchline: recovery doesn't mean going back to who you were. It means becoming someone stronger, wiser, and maybe even funnier, because life already knocked you down, and you learned how to stand up slower, but steadier. The scar is the diploma, the recovery is the proof you earned it. Humor is the cheapest medicine. Let's be honest, aging can feel like a cruel prank. You bend down to tie your shoes and suddenly need a 5-minute break. You walk into a room and forget why you're there. And don't get me started on the orchestra of cracking joints every morning. But here's the kicker: if you can laugh at it, you've already won half the battle. Scientists have proven that laughter isn't just entertainment, it's biochemistry. A good laugh floods your body with endorphins, lowers blood pressure, reduces stress hormones like cortisol, and even boosts immune function. That means a silly joke or a chuckle at your own expense is basically a free pill, no prescription, no side effects, unless you count smile wrinkles. Think about it, when life throws pain, seriousness only makes it heavier. Humor, though, slices it in half. That's why support groups often share not just tears, but ridiculous stories. An 80-year-old man once told researchers that joking about forgetting his dentures at dinner helped him avoid shame and actually bond with his friends. His embarrassment became a punchline, and the laughter carried more healing power than any apology could. And here's the deeper truth: humor isn't denial. It's rebellion. When you laugh, you're saying, yes, life tried to scare me, but I'm not giving it the satisfaction. That's why comedians often rise from the darkest backgrounds. They've learned to weaponize humor against despair. So don't underestimate your chuckle, your sarcastic one-liner, your goofy grin in the mirror. Humor is your shield, your medicine, and your reminder that while time leaves scars, it also leaves stories worth laughing about. After all, if you can giggle at your own chaos, life suddenly feels less like a tragedy and more like a sitcom, one where you're still the star. Survival is victory. Take a moment and look backward, not with regret, but with curiosity. Every heartbreak, every illness, every night you thought you wouldn't make it, yet here you are, still breathing, still stubbornly existing. That in itself is victory. Survival may not look glamorous. There are no marching bands for the mornings you simply got out of bed, no gold trophies for the nights you cried quietly and kept going anyway. But those are the hidden championships of life. Psychologists call this resilience bias. We underestimate our own strength because it rarely comes with applause. But each scar, each wrinkle, each story of "I made it through that" is a medal pinned invisibly to your chest. In fact, researchers have found that older adults who reflect on past challenges as achievements rather than regrets experience higher life satisfaction and even lower rates of depression. Survival isn't just existing, it's proof of persistence. Think of Holocaust survivor Viktor Frankl, who wrote that even in the darkest camps, those who found meaning in suffering could outlast despair. Or think of your own private wars, the surgery you endured, the betrayal you healed from, the loneliness you've walked through. Survival wasn't passive, it was active strength, and here's the shift: you don't need to climb Mount Everest to prove your worth. You already climbed mountains no one else saw. Each scar is a summit. Each wrinkle is a trail marker. Survival is not the consolation prize, it's the championship. So the next time you catch yourself saying, "I'm not strong anymore," remember this: the very fact you can say that sentence means you've already beaten every yesterday that tried to take you down. And that, my friend, is the kind of victory that outshines any trophy. The final message. So here's the truth: no mirror, no doctor, no calendar can erase. Every scar you carry is not a flaw, but a medal. A medal for battles fought in silence, for nights endured without applause, for mornings where you rose even when no one was watching. You might look at your hands and see wrinkles, but I see maps, roads you've traveled, storms you've survived, lessons carved into your very skin. Life has never been about avoiding scars, it's been about earning them. Because scars mean you tried. They mean you risked, you loved, you lost, you healed. And the question I leave you with is simple: how strong are you now? Stronger than yesterday. Stronger than you think. Strong enough to keep walking, keep laughing, keep writing the chapters that only you can write. Psychologists tell us that meaning, not perfection, is what makes a life worth living. And your scars are meaning in physical form. They are your biography, stamped across your body and soul. Don't hide them. Wear them. Let them speak for you when words fall short. So if today feels heavy, remember, you are not weak. You are the sum of every comeback, every quiet triumph, every storm survived. And that makes you unstoppable in ways no young, unscarred soul could ever understand. And that's the heart of today's journey. Every scar is your medal, every step proof of resilience. Stay strong, keep moving forward, and remember, you're living proof of survival. Subscribe now for more inspiring life stories and motivational videos in 2025 Canada.